The Kings are really good at making what was supposed to be a really solid win feel just not as good with the way they play down the stretch. And I don't know, this team and clutch free throws. I don't know what's going on. I believed Malik Monk when he sent that tweet out after the Milwaukee game, said I'll be better. I believed him. And no, he hasn't been. And I hope he can get this free throw thing figured out before it really matters. But I don't want the Kings just totally struggling down the stretch of games to take away from the rest of the game because there were so many great things that the Kings did. And at the end of the day, because of all those great things they did for, I don't know, what was it, maybe 39 minutes of the game, because of all those great things, they get the win. And obviously, playing well down the stretch of games is a huge component of a basketball game and matters a lot. And the last 9 minutes probably matter more than the first 9 minutes. But the Kings have been playing really well, except when they get a big lead late. And so I want to first kind of get in and first talk about the bad part of the game, the end of the game, and then I'll get into all the great things they did earlier on. But before I do either of those things, I want to look back at the previous schedule. And so the last 6 games, well, 7 games ago was Philadelphia. We got blown out by the Joel Embiid-less 76ers. That was the start of that 4-game losing streak. But after that, it was Phoenix, the game where we played amazing for, again, like 39 minutes or so, and then just blew it. And then there's the Milwaukee game. Or no, actually, sorry. The Milwaukee game was before that. So there's the Milwaukee game where they just blow it on free throws at the end, but played so well going up against one of the best teams in the NBA in the Bucks. Then the Phoenix game. Then you have the Pacers game. That was definitely a letdown, but they stormed back at the end and almost made a game of it. So at least there's that positive. And so that's a 4-game losing streak where you played 2 solid teams and played them well and just lost to choking at the end. But there's still positives to be taken away from how you played the rest of the game. You play Atlanta, solid win there, solid win against the Warriors, solid win here against Dallas. So the Kings have been playing well for large chunks in most of the games in about the last 6 games. And they're 3-3 in those 6 games. But I would only say there's really only one totally poor performance. And so they just really need to get their stuff together down this stretch. And so let's get into what happened in the fourth quarter. I mean, I say it was the last 9 minutes, and it was, but it also just started at the start of the fourth quarter with just a whole bunch of Malik Monk. And this is something that I've talked about before, where the fourth quarter just becomes Malik Monk dribbling around. It's not a good thing. I mean, it can be a good thing, but there are just such ups and downs. Sometimes he's turning the ball over, and that just leads to fast breaks for the other team, lets them get back into the game pretty quickly. Sometimes he's great, and sometimes he's making things happen. But it was just too much dribbling from Malik Monk. And when you get into that isolation, well, not even isolation, but just over dribbling, it just results in more turnovers. And that's really bad when you're trying to maintain a lead. And so that was when both Doncic and Sabonis were out. So the Kings were still maintaining the lead at that point, and it was fine. And so then it should just be, okay, Sabonis comes back in, and we should be good. But even when Sabonis came back in, the offense still wasn't flowing, and Luka came back in at the same time, and I hated the lineup that the Kings put out there. There was no Fox, no Kevin Huerter, and no Keegan Murray. And so first of all, you don't have Keegan to match up with Luka Doncic, and that's one problem. Second, you don't even have Huerter to match up with Luka, and I'll get to the defensive matchups later in the positives, because Huerter was really good defensively. So you don't even have him to put out there against Luka. And then offensively, I feel like you have to have one of those guys on the court. And Huerter had only played 24 minutes up to this point, and it just felt like the Kings offense would have flowed so much better if he was in the game. But it just felt like the Kings just got stuck in mud offensively, and that affected their defense. And then the defense, the rotations, just they weren't what we had seen earlier in the game. We were allowing open threes, weren't running guys off the 3-point line like we had been the rest of the game. And Herter actually came back in, and the starters, except for Barnes, who had just had to come out, so Lyles was in with the rest of the starters. They came in, and Herter immediately made an impact, got a bucket, got a deflection, and then he made a big three. I don't know why he didn't play more minutes. I mean, he played 30 minutes, but when you look at the rest of the starters' minutes, you have Fox at 37, or no, Sabonis at 36 was the least of the other 4 starters. So I feel like the fourth quarter kind of just got off to a bad start because of a bad lineup out there. And then it's just about not being locked in. There's something about the Kings getting a 20-point lead and them just totally losing all of their intensity and just not being locked in. It happened earlier in the game as well, where they hit 20 at the very start of the third quarter and then just totally dropped off. And at the start of that third quarter, they hit those 2 threes, the 2 corner threes to go up 20. And then again, the offense just totally changed and they were rushing things. And there's a difference between playing with pace, which they did the entire game, and rushing things and rushing bad shots, because they were playing with pace, but they were playing with patience the rest of the game. And playing with patience against this Mavericks team, I mean, the Kings can pick apart their defense every single possession. And then we got to the missed free throws, and I don't know what to say about that. I mean, they're just missing free throws. Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, that doesn't really come with the not locked in thing. That's just a totally different mental aspect of the game. And so I feel like there's kind of 2 different mental sides of it, the free throw side and then the not being locked in side. And so on the not being locked in side, some mistakes were like Fox had the rebound right in front of him and just kind of didn't grab it strongly and started fading up court, trying to go up court before he grabbed the rebound. Seth Curry sneaks in, grabs it, lays it up. Then you have him going down, missing the second free throw. Again, like, that is what it is. The bigger problem is that then the Mavs go right down, 1 against 4. Josh Green beats everyone down the court and gets a foul. Like, those are the moments that just can't happen down the stretch. And then you just had open corner 3 after open corner 3. Again, the rotation's not there like they were for the rest of the game. The defense was great the rest of the game, and then they just weren't able to run shooters off the 3-point line when it came down the stretch. And then again, you have the offense just totally stalling out. There was that one possession where they got it to Sabonis in the post, and then Sabonis and Herter just weren't on the same page. Sabonis wanted him to clear out. Herter was just going to stay there. Shot clock's winding down. Sabonis just needed to put it on the ground earlier, even if Herter didn't do what he wanted him to do. And then it just is too late, and he travels with it, trying to force something late in the shot clock. There were a bunch of other bad possessions down the stretch, the ball just sticking. And so the Kings just need to figure out how to run their clutch time offense. Last season, it was a lot of Fox and Sabonis pick and roll. This season, it's been a lot more Malik Monk Sabonis pick and roll, which can be good, but it's also just been a lot more isolation basketball and just a lot less movement in general. This definitely wasn't Suns level game of bad offensive execution down the stretch. Like, they still were running some actions, which they didn't do at all against the Suns. It was just straight isolation. But they absolutely just need to figure out a way to keep running their offense down the stretch. But I mean, that's the offense. Like, the defense is the bigger problem. They had a poor fourth quarter on both ends, and they allowed 40 points in the fourth quarter. The rest of the game, they allowed 25 points, 24 points, and 26 points in the other 3 quarters. And it was just about leaving open shooters and not rotating out to them like they had been the rest of the game. So then Fox finally scored, and then the Kings have a great defensive possession, an amazing one that just seems like it locks up the game, right? Just like we'd seen the rest of the game. The rotation's on point, extra efforts. It was amazing. And then again, it's the not being locked in part. It's Sabonis fouling Luka on a 3-point shot. And at that point, we were up 10. And, I'm not going to lie, I was yelling at my TV, like, what are you doing? And then I took a step back and I'm like, okay, we're still up by a lot. There's like no time left. It should be fine. Luka even missed one of those free throws. But then the Kings reminded me why I do get so mad and anxious about those just brain fart moments where Sabonis fouled out on that possession, and then Fox just way too casual going up the court. Sure, you can say he got fouled, but he shouldn't be dribbling into traffic there that casually anyways. They allow some contact down the stretch. That's just how it works, and he should not be that casual with it. And I think casual is kind of the perfect way to describe a lot of the things the Kings did down the stretch. So he gets the 8-second violation. Luka hits the 3. Monk misses the free throws. I didn't even talk about earlier Harrison Barnes airballing a free throw. And then the Kings just let Maxi Kleber go straight to the rim off an inbounds. Just like there's 10 seconds left. It's a 5-point game. You just have to force them to catch it going away from the rim. And you let him catch it right at the rim. That was a very disappointing defensive possession. But then Harrison Barnes steps up and hits the 2 free throws to finally put it away. It's just it should not be that hard. It really shouldn't. And it's been a growing concern. But now putting that aside, we got all the negatives out of the way. Let's look at the positives from this game because, like I said, there were a lot. And it started with De'Aaron Fox on the offensive end, just being ultra aggressive, and that's what I love to see. Like, I think his first shot was a 3-pointer, one that I did not like. And then after that, he was just going to the rim, getting to his mid-range. And all game, he was just putting guys in the post. And that's more of the Fox from last season. Putting guys in the post, getting to his mid-range, getting to the free throw line, just killing them in the mid-range. Like, I love that his 3-point shot has become a threat, but he shouldn't totally go away from the mid-range. And so we saw him getting it going, and now he's had back-to-back really solid games. 34 points, 5 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. And so offensively, he's finally got it going again, which is nice to see. And he was just the catalyst for the Kings playing with a lot of pace. And that is always a key for the Kings offense to get going, is the pace that they're playing at. And then we have the defensive side of the ball, where the starting unit especially was just super locked in. The bench, a little more up and down, a little bit of a different story, but all 5 starters I thought had really good defensive games. And that defense, it starts with 2 guys in my opinion. It starts with Keegan Murray and Kevin Huerter. Keegan Murray being the first point of attack against Luka Doncic. He did a great job of constantly having a body on him, not fouling him. This was a very well officiated game, I will say, other than Sabonis getting clearly hacked a few times. But that's normal. That always happens. He doesn't get any calls. But right away, like, there wasn't a foul for the first 5-6 minutes of the game. And both Luka and Fox were foul baiting inside, and they both didn't get calls. And that right there, I'm like, that's a really good sign, because if they're not calling those, moments where guys are trying to foul bait, then Luka's whole game, it collapses right there. Obviously, Luka coming off a 73-point game the night before. I believe he played 43 minutes. He played 46 minutes out of 48 minutes in this one. I don't get that. Like, why? Obviously, they don't have Kyrie Irving. They don't have a few other guys like Derrick Jones Jr. and some others. But why are you playing Luka back-to-back 40-plus minutes? It just seems odd to me, especially when the Kings had a 20-plus point lead pretty late, like 9 minutes to go. I thought they were going to pull him. And, like, you can see why they didn't, because obviously they came back. But at the same time, like, everything had to go perfectly for the Mavs, and it almost did. But that's why it's so hard to actually come back from those deficits, because, the Kings tried gifting it to them. They still didn't win it. So it's just odd that he played 46 minutes. But Keegan Murray played 40 minutes, matching him for a large portion of the game. Mike Brown definitely didn't want to play him 46 minutes. He also got in a little bit of foul trouble with 4 fouls at the end of the third quarter, so he got pulled there. But for the most part, he did a really good job of not fouling against Luka, just making him uncomfortable, contesting the step back threes, which Each time a step back three missed. Like, we're getting closer and closer to a win here. And then, of course, he finally hits one right at the very end where it's like, oh, is this really happening? Are we really going to throw this game away? But Keegan did a great job of also then when Luka would take a screen and someone else would have to switch onto him, a lot of times it was Herter because Herter was, I think, being targeted by the Mavs, which didn't work at all. But Keegan did a good job of following Luka and staying in the play even when he got screened off. So Herter did a great job of keeping Luka in front of him. And there were many times where Sabonis did a really good job of contesting the shot and giving Keegan time to recover and get the blocks. And that's why Keegan had 3 blocks. The Kings as a team had a season high in blocks with 10. They had 9 blocks in the first half. So you have Barnes with 1, Keegan with 3, Fox with 2, Herter with 2, and Lyles and Kessler Edwards each with 1. And so they were making just everything so tough for Luka. No matter where he was on the court, he was being shown bodies. Keegan and Kevin Herter doing an amazing job on him. And then when Luka would swing the ball, everyone else did a great job of rotating out to shooters. They were running the shooters off the three-point line, forcing them into tough passes. And they were running them off the three-point line, but then still there was always someone waiting in the paint to be able to contest their shot or even take the charge like Keegan did at one point. And just the amount of extra efforts we saw and the attention to detail was just something we rarely see. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen the Kings be that connected defensively and give that many extra efforts for such a long time in a game. I was terrified the entire time that at some point it was going to fall apart. And it did, but I just expected it to be like in the second quarter. And then when it didn't happen, I'm like, oh, it's going to be in the third quarter. No, it was in the fourth quarter. Luckily, we had a big enough lead. I mean, it's hard to continue to give those extra efforts time after time to run those shooters off the line and be connected defensively the entire game. But those are the moments where I think our defense really shines because we have good team defenders. And that's especially where Kevin Herter shines defensively. And so when the entire team is locked in and committed to playing that team defense, it's a beautiful thing. There were so many times where like Trey Lyles would get in there and get his hand on a ball, block a shot, and just there was always someone there. Kessler Edwards played 1 minute in this game, but he had an amazing defensive possession when he came in. At the end of the third quarter, Keegan picks up his 4th foul, so we go to Kessler Edwards, and on two separate occasions on the same possession, he locked Luka up. It's just a beautiful thing. Now, the rest of the bench, outside of Lyles and Edwards, I mean, JaVale was solid. And then you get to like Davion and Monk, and yeah, those 2 guys were rough. I mean, and it's been said since very early on last season, the Kings starting unit is really good and can be very solid defensively. And it's just once they start making substitutions, it falls apart. And it's especially substitutions at the guard position when you're bringing in Davion and Monk, who are both smaller players. And so the second you're subbing out Herter or Keegan or Barnes for one of those guys, that's just a lot of size and length being subtracted from your defense, and it hurts a lot. Like when Lyles is out there for Barnes, it's fine, but it's when one of those guards comes in for one of the wing players, because only one of those guards can come in for Fox, and Fox very good defensively as well, so you're even getting a downgrade there. Davion just had a tough time. I mean, he got switched onto Luka and didn't get much help, which, like, that just can't happen. Like, I get Davion's thing is defense, but he can't guard Luka. Not his fault. But then he also had some other bad moments. Throwing the ball away just was not good offensively, wasn't good defensively. So a rough game for Davion after he had strung 2 good games together. So hopefully we can see him bounce back again, because as a bench player, I mean, you don't expect a bench player to have a good game every game, or else they wouldn't be a bench player probably. So it's just about, can he bounce back from this quickly within the next 1 or 2 games to maintain his spot in the rotation. Sabonis, last time he played Dallas, absolutely dominated. And this time, I felt like we could have seen him dominate more inside, but he wasn't totally looking for his own shot. And he fouled out by the end, and he got called for two moving screens late in the, or not late in the fourth quarter, but late in the game. I think they were both in the fourth quarter, might have been late in the third quarter. And one of them was justified, one of them was absolutely nothing. And so that definitely didn't help when it came to him fouling out or his turnover numbers. And so he had 6 turnovers, again, 2 of them off those offensive fouls on screens. He lost the ball a couple times, traveled. I just thought he could have been more aggressive. Like, he was efficient, 7 for 10, 1 for 1 from 3, had 17 points, 11 boards. I just thought he probably could have been a little more dominant inside. But obviously Fox had it going and other guys were scoring as well, so it wasn't that important for him to continue to look for his own shot. And Harrison Barnes coming off 2 career games, kind of, 2 30-plus point games. He went into halftime with, it was either 2 or 4 points, I can't remember, but I was fine with that because other guys were creating. He was just taking everything from within the offense and wasn't forcing anything, but also wasn't passing anything up. And so I was like, other guys are scoring, so we don't need Barnes to be leading the team in scoring every game or anything, or even second. But then he comes out of halftime, and again, he just goes on a scoring tear. Hit 4 for 7 from 3, 6 for 11 from the field, scored 20 points. He also had 6 rebounds at halftime, ended the game with 6 rebounds. So, would have been nice if he could have grabbed at least one in the second half. But, it's okay. We'll take the 6 rebounds. The Kings definitely got out-rebounded on the offensive glass. Dallas had 13 offensive rebounds. That was definitely something the Kings needed to clean up a bit. But I also understand that can be hard when you're in transition, in rotation so much of the time. But just another great game for Barnes. Like, I don't know what's happening here. It's great. It's like we traded for a 5th starter. He's back, apparently. I don't know. He even had some great defensive plays. I mean, it was kind of funny just watching him at times when Luka would drive in and he would just kind of stand there with his arms up and just not move. But honestly, against Luka, that's probably the best strategy because he's just trying to draw fouls anyways. So if you just stand there straight up, I mean, that works. But there's the moment at the end of the first quarter where he got switched onto Luka and he showed the mobility on the perimeter, forcing Luka wide and forcing a miss. So that was a great moment. He had another one where he stopped an easy basket from Derek Lively by stripping him inside, and then that created a Keegan transition 3. That was a big moment in the game, I thought, like kind of a momentum swing moment. I thought Herder also had a lot of those moments, creating in transition. He ended the game with 5 assists, and it felt like all of them were just throwing the ball ahead in transition, leading to easy buckets. This is how we were used to the Kings playing last season, especially the starting unit. Just everyone in the starting unit getting into double figures. Keegan with 15 was the lowest scorer of the starters, but then everyone also being connected defensively for most of the game. I kind of already talked about Monk over dribbling in the fourth, but it wasn't just the fourth where he was having an up and down game. It was the entire game where it felt like at any moment he could make a great play or he could turn the ball over. And so, again, we're kind of back to last season where it's just the Monk experience of great things can happen or horrible things can happen. But he wasn't shooting very much, only 5 shot attempts. And lately he just hasn't been shooting a lot, but he had the 6 assists. There was a point in the second quarter where you tell Monk was just feeling it in the pick and roll, either getting to the rim or lobbing it up for someone like JaVale. There were a couple pretty incredible catches from JaVale, and also the Kings were kind of obsessed with throwing lobs in this one, which was interesting. Not all of them successful, but the ones to JaVale McGee were successful because that dude is still super athletic. And I thought JaVale had, solid minutes contributing in the pick and roll, not making too many mistakes defensively. And so, just a solid showing from him. And speaking of those dunks, you had De'Aaron Fox with the monster jam, weaving through the defense, turning on the Jets, and then throwing it down is a very surprising dunk. And I feel like that's how you can tell he's back and he's feeling like himself. There are a lot of reasons to be positive about this Kings team. And, it was hard during the 4-game losing streak to still have a positive outlook. But like I talked about, they played really well against Milwaukee. They played really well against Phoenix. They just have to figure out how to close games. Obviously, Fox was never going to be have the exact same clutch numbers as last season. He has obviously dropped off, and so other guys have to figure out how to not be so reliant on him. Also, Fox, for some reason, is just better from behind or when the game is tied. Kind of the anti Steph Curry. I mean, that's not really true, but Steph Curry, their thought is he's a front runner, which is not true, and actually saw that tonight. But he's kind of the anti that, where he's better from behind or when it's tied, and when the Kings are ahead, he just doesn't have that killer instinct. He wants to, he doesn't run from the grind. He wants to make it, he wants to do it the hard way. And this whole team, they can't do it the easy way. It's really annoying. But nonetheless, a 3-game win streak going into Memphis, a Memphis team that is still ravaged by injuries. And so theoretically, the easiest game on this road trip, but also the first game on this road trip where the team isn't on the second night of a back-to-back, the team that the Kings are playing, that is. And so despite Memphis being, ravaged by injuries, they've still been playing well recently and been playing really well in the month of January, but obviously still no Ja, no Steven Adams, Brandon Clark, and they haven't had Luke Kennard either. And the last time the Kings played the Grizzlies, it was also in Memphis, and it was that 123-92 beatdown, the most complete game the Kings have played all season, a defensive masterclass from the Kings. And so hopefully they can continue their good defensive performance from this Mavs game into that game against Memphis. And I think if Barnes and Huerter can continue contributing the way they have been, if Keegan obviously continues to be better and better offensively, if Fox is performing like he was early in the season, this Kings team is improved defensively from last season. They are. And so if they can get back to where they were offensively, or even, just close to that, then I think Kings are absolutely primed to go on a big run here. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, but Mike Brown won a challenge. He also lost one. Both were calls, I believe, on Kevin Huerter, although I never got confirmation on the first one, but I think it was called on Huerter reaching in on Luka, and it was successful because he got all ball. And then the unsuccessful one was in transition, where Huerter got called for a block, where there was very minimal contact, but that's just how they call it. And if they called it and there's any contact while Huerter's moving, they're probably gonna uphold it. So, but 1 for 2. I mean, especially winning the first one so you get the second one. I mean, we'll take that from Mike Brown. But anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Monday to recap the game against the Grizzlies. Peace.